Hi, everyone. I'm Mary McGuire, Director of Public and Legislative Affairs for AAA Northeast, and I'd like to welcome you to College Amidst COVID, Preparing Your Family for the Unexpected. I don't need to tell all of you that it's a very challenging, unprecedented time to be a high school senior or a college freshman or a college student, or to be the parent or caretaker of a young student. There is so much uncertainty right now, so many questions regarding policies, procedures, and finances when it comes to applying to college or navigating freshman year 2020. Joining us today with solid advice to sort through the confusion is our AAA Northeast Senior Manager of Student Lending and Financial Aid Advising, Donald Kerr, who has spent the last 25 years counseling students and parents regarding the financial challenges of college and more, and graduated from Rhode Island College with a degree in business management. Things were a lot simpler when we were in college, Don, weren't they?
Oh, they certainly were.
We didn't have to deal with all of these crises, fortunately. So welcome, Don, and hello to our audience today. This program is being recorded if you'd like to share it with friends later, and we invite you to type any questions you have live into the chat box during the broadcast. Don't be shy. We know there are a lot of questions out there. So Don, I want to start now on a personal note. You yourself have a college student of your own right now, and I know he is out of state. So how's his year going so far, and what kind of modifications have he and your family had to make amid this pandemic?
Yeah, I have a junior in college, and it's definitely been a challenging year. Even 2 weeks before he was supposed to start and go away, he was going to be all on campus learning. So we were preparing for that, getting ready to move him into his new apartment. And then a week beforehand, we found out some of his classes are going remote and he's going to be hybrid. So we were quickly scrambling and going, well, what's going to happen if they go completely online? Do we want to send them far away? That's not a preferable choice. We'd rather, if he's going to be online, stay home with us. But what about the lease we just signed? Are we going to be on the hook for that? So we were left scrambling with a lot of questions to try to answer and figure out what was going to happen. He's doing really good. The college is going fantastic. Everything's settled in. So he's doing really well so far.
So I'm so glad to hear that, first of all. And let me ask you about that lease situation, because your son is in an off-campus apartment, as many upperclassmen are in colleges around the country. Would you have had any recourse with that lease if you had to break that lease?
Yeah, so we went through it, and with our particular lease, we had no recourse. The only out, if a student were to transfer out, is to simply find somebody to replace it and take your lease. Now, we were kind of in a different situation. We're at a pretty professionally managed complex, which is all pretty much rented to just college students. So it's geared to that on a pretty big corporate level. There's no out, but everybody should read that lease individually. If you're, duplex or one of those 3-family apartments and you're renting from an individual homeowner, well, then your lease might be different. Maybe you only have a 2-month penalty for breaking that lease. So those are the things you really have to look at and know if things are going to change for your student on that college campus. And you've signed that lease agreement. What are the ramifications for breaking it? You need to look at those details and prepare yourself.
That's really good advice. So read the lease. And do you have a sense that landlords are any more lenient right now, given what so many college students and their families are going through with all of the unexpected changes in some cases?
Some are going to be, and some are not. Maybe if you've rented from them for a couple of years, you've got a good relationship, that could be helpful. But if it's a total stranger and they're relying on those rents to pay for their own family expenses, that could be a little tougher of a situation. They may not have that flexibility, but those are all good things you want to ask and find out. So you're prepared for what you have to do.
So a little bit of advanced planning may pay off, and definitely read the fine print. So Don, I'd like to talk about high school and college students today because they really face separate sets of issues right now. Let's begin with college students. Across the country and here in New England, we've seen college students start the year in person only to be sent home due to a COVID outbreak. UNC Chapel Hill, Notre Dame, problems at SUNY Oneonta, Boston College has had issues, as had Providence College, to name just a few. If this happens, Don, what are the most important things for students and their families to consider? Do they pack up everything and clear out, or and leave campus with the expectation that they'll be back at some point, or how do they handle that? What's your best advice?
Yeah, so the first thing you want to do is reach out to the campus administration and find out what their plan is for addressing it. Are they shutting down for the semester? Are they sending everybody home for the year? Or what I've seen some schools do recently is they've done kind of that 2-week quarantine. They're saying we're going to go online for 2 weeks only, and then after 2 weeks, we're going to retest and we're going to open the campus back up. So once you know what the college's plan are, then you can plan accordingly. You can say, well, listen, I'm just packing some overnight bags and I'm leaving. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Or you can take the approach that say, oh, I got to bring more stuff home with me because I'm probably going to be home for the rest of the semester. So once you know from that school kind of what their plan is, then you can in turn go ahead and make your plan moving forward.
I think this will be a recurrent theme of our half hour together today. This is really the time to communicate with your school counselors, with the admissions office. This is really the time to pick up the phone and ask those questions, or go online and ask those questions. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I've heard a few, scientists talk about this, and they get one COVID-19 question answered, and they create 10 more. It's the same thing with your kids on college. You're going to get one of these questions answered about what you need to do, and you're going to have 10 more questions that you want to ask. So following that approach, the more you know, the easier this is going to be for you.
Yeah, the more you know, always a good thing. So if this type of scenario occurs, Don, and the classroom, which the student expected to be in person and was hoping to be in person, suddenly shifts to virtual, are parents or students entitled to any kind of a tuition rebate in that case?
So you're going to see most cases, you'll definitely get room and board. You'll get those fees back if they're kicking your kids off the college campus. Very similar to what happened to us during last semester. We did get prorated refunds on all those things. The tuition can be a little bit different. You're going to see some schools may offer a tuition discount, and then you're going to see other schools that charge additional fees. I, in my own individual bill, saw this year for the first time an online fee for an online learning fee. So in that case, we're getting charged more. But other schools might give you a break. So it's a good question to ask. And the least they can do is say no. So ask your school if they're going to give you those types of tuition discounts. I think one thing I've seen, and this is even where I've really seen it, is at the high school, is to kind of consider those online learnings. Last year, everybody was kind of thrown into this, and the online quality was not, necessarily there for everybody. Even at my sons and my other sons and daughters' high school, it just wasn't there. But now that they've had a year to plan for it, it's a half a year to plan for it, and they're ready for this new year, I've seen the quality of that online learning has really increased. Still never the same as that in-person social cues and interaction, but the quality has gotten a little bit better. So maybe consider it, and sometimes you'll be surprised.
That's a really good point. I think there's obviously been a learning curve for everyone as far as that online learning, and certainly people are more adept at it, both teachers and students at this point. So I think that's a really good point. You talked about that online fee that some colleges are charging. I actually have heard some parents complaining about that. Some parents say the online fee they feel is really worth it because their student is getting a lot of services for it. I've heard other parents say their students are getting virtually no service for that online fee. Is that another thing that you can negotiate with the college admissions office?
Oh, absolutely. You should always question what's in that bill. In my case, very similar. It was an online fee, but then there was also a student activity fee and a gym fee, a recreation fee. Well, I'm like, well, how can I be paying both fees? Either he's online or he's on the college campus. Which fees am I paying? And do they take one out? They certainly can. So you ask those questions, and sometimes the schools can be a little have a little wiggle room sometimes.
A gym fee. That's very interesting. Okay, so again, it pays to read the fine print of whatever you're being sent by your particular college. So what about this? Because I know this has been a dilemma for a lot of students. If students are sent home, but they don't feel that the virtual experience is worth it, that's not what they were planning on, can that student then opt to withdraw or take a gap or bridge year, or is it too late, Don, once a student has enrolled?
So typically, once a student's enrolled, there's a very short window in which you can withdraw with no penalties. It's usually within the first to 2 week of the schools. Because of everything that's going on, some schools have been more flexible and they've extended that withdrawing date. So that would be one question to say, I'm ready to withdraw. I don't feel this is worth it. Go and talk to the school and say, these are the reasons why I want to withdraw. I'm going to be back next semester. They may allow you to draw without any penalties or fees. If it's halfway through the semester and you get uncomfortable, you may be out of luck and you may not get any money back. So timing is going to be a very, very critical issue of when you withdraw. But I have seen some schools be a little bit more flexible than what they traditionally are this year.
Yeah, and again, I think the message that you would probably send is if you don't ask, you aren't going to be able to work out any kind of negotiation. So again, really important to ask the question
Correct.
of college counselors. So Don, I know you and your family went through this with your son. What kinds of safety questions should students and their families be asking colleges right now? For example, I know some college students who are in triples. They have two roommates in a fairly small space. I know others who are in quarantine, and I know others who have singles. There are students who are staying in hotel rooms as well. So what kinds of safety questions should students and their families be aware of?
So the number one thing they want to do is they want to know what the college's COVID rules or guidelines are. If it's gathering size, whatever rules that school has put in place to help stop the spread of the disease around the campus, you want to make sure your student is well aware of what those are. Then you want to look into things such as testing. What are the testing procedures on the school? How often do they test? And what is going to happen to my child if he tests positive? If he's on a dorm room, where is he going to go? He's miles away from home. Are they going to send him home? Some of the advice now has been saying keep the kids on the college campus. So where is he going to go if your child gets sick? Do they have a quarantine dorm at that college where he can go? And what type of health care do they have ready for him? Do they have extra medical staff on campus to help deal with those particular cases? And how can they escalate it for it if it becomes severe and the child needs to get off to the hospital for more care? So what are they doing once they get sick? And then as well as how are they preventing it? And then really knowing those rules that the college is enforcing is definitely critical.
What about dining hall situations and that type of thing? Is that something that parents should be asking about?
Absolutely look into that, because that's certainly the masks become ineffective when it comes to eating. So do they have staggered approaches where they're sending certain kids to dining halls at certain times? Are they limiting that capacity that's in there? So if your student goes off to the dining hall to try to grab a quick bite between classes, is he going to be facing a long line because he can't get in due to capacity restrictions? So those are all things you need to try to plan into your day as a college student to make sure you're safe and can still get to class and get your learning done.
Yeah, and again, asking questions just so important. You raised a really good point in answering that last question, which is the situation of students not being safe to go back home or go back into the community, because if they have been exposed to someone who has COVID, or if they've had it themselves, then they become spreaders. So is that something that most college campuses will have a policy on in terms of return home, or is that an individual decision that can be made by a student and his or her family?
That's a little bit of both. Certainly, yeah, as an individual, you can make that choice to leave. Perhaps you just no longer feel comfortable being on that college campus. And some colleges are going to set forth their policies and say, all right, we have to ask you to leave. And others are going to say we're following the current guidelines. and we're going to put you in our quarantine dorm. So it really is going to be a lot of kind of case by case basis with all these individual students at different colleges. But again, ask those questions so you know what's going to happen if your child gets sick at your college.
Good advice, Don. I want to move on to high school students and some of the challenges that they are facing, specifically high school seniors who are applying to college. But we do have an audience question that relates to college students. So I'm going to put this one to you, Don. Our audience member says, I've heard a lot about colleges being under financial strain and that many may not survive this crisis. Is this real? Well, certainly we know it is. Are there things parents should learn about the financial health of colleges? What a great question. Thoughts on how we should think about the viability of colleges over the next 4 to 5 years. And of course, we remember what happened in Massachusetts with Mount Ida College just a couple of years ago, where people had already accepted financial aid packages, et cetera, and then suddenly the college ran into financial trouble. So what about that, Don? Should you do some research on the financial health of these institutions?
Absolutely. That is a fantastic question. So even prior to COVID-19 hitting and the current situation we're in, there were colleges across this country that were folding for financial reasons. And that was expected to continue for the next couple of years. Analysts predicting more and more colleges. Now they're not your major colleges, but these are some of your more smaller private regional colleges that have lower enrollment totals. So everything that's now happened, the additional financial pressures that are on these colleges, some analysts are predicting, 5–10% of colleges could close over the next 5 to 10 years based on a result of this pandemic. So that pressure of these colleges potentially closing has definitely increased almost tenfold based on the pandemic. It is a very, very valuable question that you need to ask when you're considering what college. Look into the strength of that school's financial situation. Are they stable? Are they going to be around for the next 4 years? You don't want to have that case where you send your child off to that, private college, small enrollment. You spent all that time doing your college tours. You finally get there, you're on campus for a year, and then they close their doors. So it's definitely worth doing your research.
What's the best way to do that research, Don? Is it to check the size of the school's endowment, for example? Is that the most telling feature?
Yeah, you can look at some of their endowment size, but look at enrollments as well. Are they a big college? Look at their selectivity. Do they have 58,000 kids applying for 2,000 seats, and are they always full? Or is it a smaller college, and they're always looking to fill some of their seats? That's probably a really good indicator. Sometimes you can see, how selective, if they select their selectivity is really going to potentially affect their finances down the road. If a lot of people want to go to that school, they're probably going to be off pretty good financially. But if they're struggling to hit those enrollment numbers year after year, it may not be the case, and their finances could be a little tougher.
All good research points for sure. And I'm sure every college out there would love to have 58,000 kids applying for 2,000 slots right now. Some do, no doubt. So, Don, let's talk about high school seniors. This certainly is going to be a uniquely challenging year to apply to college. I know a number of high school seniors. I know you spend a lot of time talking to families, students, and parents and guardians all throughout the year. What general advice amidst the pandemic and this ever-changing landscape, what advice do you have for seniors and juniors who are looking at applying to college right now?
So try to keep the process as normal as you normally would. Don't try to do anything different. You want this to kind of feel pretty normal. So you're going to want to make sure you're looking at colleges that are right for you. Probably one thing that could be a good tool for them to look at is how well is the college handling the pandemic today, right? Do they have large outbreaks on their college campus correctly? Are they containing things? That's probably an additional factor to throw in and consider when you're looking at your college choices that are out there. Certainly the financial aid season is coming up around the corner. So everybody needs to be concerned with making sure they're applying for financial aid to get ready for next year. Believe it or not, it's kind of hard to say. We just sent our kids off, but you already have to start thinking of next year. Certainly for positive reasons, we're all looking forward to next year and kind of that future and kind of a brighter future. But what people will need to start doing is applying for financial aid. October 1st is the first key date when you should be applying for financial aid. That's when forms become available, such as the FAFSA form, and everybody should be filling that out. You can go to the federal government's website, studentaid.gov is the place to apply for the FAFSA form. There can be some deadlines associated with it. So at the site, studentaid.gov, you can see if you have any state deadlines that are out there as well.
So we have the slide right here on the screen so that everyone can copy that address into their browser if they need to. And that October 1st deadline is coming up right around the corner, Don. So what kinds of things do parents and students need to have in place by October 1st? Do they have to have everything done by October 1st, or is that the beginning of the window?
That is the beginning of the window. What they absolutely have to have done by then is they need to figure out what their school's priority deadline dates. So when do they have to have the forms filled out by? That is should be their top priority. You can go to the college's financial aid site and you can look for what's called their priority deadline date. It's going to be done by generally, freshmen or upperclassmen. And then can even be broken down by decision. Are you doing the regular admission process to the college, or are you doing an early action process? Their college will list the date based on those types of grids when they want these forms filled out. And you absolutely should get those forms filled out prior to that date.
And it takes some organizing. I mean, I've had 3 go through college, and just hearing the word FAFSA fills me with anxiety, even though it's over at this point. Are the deadlines different for early decision and early action students than they are for regular decision for financial aid?
Yeah, they can be. So if you're doing a regular admissions process, your financial aid deadlines could be something like January 1st, February 1st. They could be far off in the future, so you don't have to run out and get it done by October 1st. There could be, if you're doing the early action, early decision, I've seen deadline dates, November 1st, November 15th, that they want these financial aid forms filled out by. If that's the case, you've got to rush and get these forms done and make sure you've got everything in place so you don't miss out on any potential aid your family may qualify for.
One thing we found, our first college student applied regular decision, and then our daughter applied early. And we didn't realize that deadline, that financial aid deadline in that case, was sooner. And our guidance counselor actually did not tell us at the time. And so I think in missing out on that first year, it really impacted the future years as well. Is that accurate? Is that the case?
Yeah, absolutely. The freshman year financial aid package sets the tone for the next 4 years. Unless there are major changes in your financial situation from a household perspective, you can kind of count on what you're going to get that freshman year is going to be about the same for the next couple of years at your school. So it's very critical. It really is in that freshman year that you make sure you're maximizing everything you could get because it's going to help you in the long run.
And that really sort of sets the precedent for the other years, it seems to be the case.
Absolutely, it does. It does.
So you also mentioned you don't want to be rushing, and that's because in many cases, you have to get documents, tax documents, documents from your accountant perhaps. You got to dig up some things that might not be close at hand. So that's why you really, as a parent or a student, need to allow plenty of time to get the FAFSA done, correct?
You do. You have to gather some information. You're going to want to have your federal tax returns with you, W-2 statements, information on bank accounts, checking savings, retirement type accounts, 401ks, things like that. You're going to want to know all that financial information, as well as even sometimes the demographics. You're going to need social security numbers, things like that. You want to gather everything and have it handy before you go onto that website and apply. Good news is they do have a checklist on that same website where you can go and print out, and it says these are all the documents that you want to try to gather before going to apply. If everything goes well, the majority of your information gets imported from the IRS and your taxes update into these forms pretty easily, and it auto fills all the information in for you. But it doesn't always work. Sometimes those tools break down or they're just not working for everybody. So it's great to have that information there so you're not scrambling, going on the file cabinet and looking for it at the last minute.
Again, good advice. And by the way, we need to give you some kudos here, Don, because I think a lot of our AAA members do not realize you yourself and your team help parents and students fill out the FAFSA, correct? If there are questions and you're a member, we can call you and say, I don't understand this part. Can you help me with it? That's something you do on a regular basis, correct?
Correct. Yep, we do that on a regular basis. It's a benefit for our members at no charge. Whether you filled out the FAFSA form and just want somebody to review it, or if you got stuck on a question, we can help provide you the guidance and assistance, and even explaining, well, what happens next? I have submitted my FAFSA. What's the next steps in the financial aid process? What does this award letter that I got from the school mean, and how do I translate it? And then looking for scholarships, and how can I pay for that bill when it comes? Kind of all those steps throughout the financial aid process and helping fund and pay for the tuition. We can offer you all that free advising and counseling at no charge for our members.
That's right. You help parents and students compare award letters. You help them figure out how to pay, as you said. Refinancing college loans is an option at AAA as
Yep.
well. So I just think so many members don't realize that we provide this tremendous college counseling service, and it's such a challenging time for students and parents. So just want to make that point that if you want to talk to Don, you can, and we're going to give you the phone number at the end. So we see the website here for student lending. So again, you're free to go online to AAA.com student lending, and there's a lot of great information on that site. So aside from the financial part, do you recommend, given the fact that we're now hearing that a vaccine may not be available until well into 2021, widely available, I should say, until well into 2021, end of second quarter, third quarter, do you recommend that some high school seniors or all high school seniors at least consider a gap year given what's going on in the world?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. We have definitely seen the amount of students who are taking gap years this year increase just for that reason. So could be lots of reasons why it makes sense to take a gap year. Certainly economically, families are struggling. There could be parents who no longer have the financial means to support their kids through college this year or the upcoming year. So you can have a lot of valid reasons for why you need to take that gap year. Check with your school during the admissions process, because they can vary. Some schools will defer and be happy to defer. Other schools may have you go through a process and say, okay, I applied for admissions, I got in, but can I defer? Some schools are going to make you fill out a plan to say, here's what I'm going to be doing with my year off. Also, they may not allow you to defer for just one semester. Sometimes it's hard to come back in the middle of the school year. So they may say, yes, we'll grant this to you, but you need to take the whole year off. And consider, if you say, hey, I'm going to take a gap year for these reasons this year, well, what are your plans? What are you going to do during that gap year? Are you going to get a job to try to make some money because that's what's going on with your family now? Are you going to take some courses? Are you going to do some volunteer work in your field to try to get some good experience? If you're going to do that, make sure you have a solid plan of what you're going to do during that gap year.
Yeah, that's really good advice, and that's interesting. So I was just going to ask that question. Can you get into the school of your choice and then defer a year? But it sounds as if every school is going to have a different set of rules and regulations and different policy around that.
They are. They're definitely going to have different rules and regulations and different procedures they want you to go through. You can generally get accepted, make your deposit, and then say, I'm deferring my enrollment into the school. But how is that process? What do you have to go through? How long? Is it a year, 2 years? Those are all the things you want to ask your school to see, what you'll be allowed to do.
So how can parents and students make sure they're protecting their tuition investment in the current college, high school climate? What are the best things for them to keep in mind, or the most important things for them to keep in mind, Don?
So the number one thing they want to keep in mind is kind of whatever that withdrawal drop dead date is. So if they're attending, then they need to withdraw at the last minute. The other thing I've seen a lot of families look at this year is called tuition insurance, where you can protect your child if they get ill and you can cover your investment in your child that year. There is a firm, I believe it's out of Boston, called GradGuard that does a pretty good job of this, but you want to read these policies very carefully to understand what it's covering. For example, it could cover your child if they get sick, but it may not cover your child if the school decides to shut down because of the pandemic, because so many people have gotten sick on campus. You may not be covered in that case, but you may be covered as an individual if you get sick. So look at those things. Tuition insurance can sometimes help you protect your investment.
So has there always been tuition insurance, Don, or is this something that has become more widely available amidst the pandemic?
It's always been around. It's been around for quite some time in different forms. Some of it have been under kind of life insurance policies geared towards what happens if a parent who's paying for college is gone. But I think some of the things we're seeing this year are unique and starting to say, hey, this is going to be more needed based on the pandemic and everything that's happening. So I think some of the policies have changed, but they have been around for quite some time.
One thing I want to reference before we close, you had shown us a really great map that the New York Times has created that gives parents an idea of what the situation is on various college campuses. And here's that map that we're talking about. Don, can you talk about this map and how it works and how parents can make good use of this map?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorite tools that I came across a couple of days ago. What it does, it allows you to see how many cases are being reported of COVID-19 on an individual campus level. So you can see the states and you can see the different colleges and you can see how well they're doing. I loved it very much because I looked at my son's school. When he first started, they were testing everybody when they arrived. They had a total of 6 cases. I had checked this site, and 3 weeks later, they have a total of 8 cases. So now me as a parent, I'm very relieved, and I've got a nice peace of mind that I know that the school that my son's attending is doing a great job of keeping the virus under control on campus. It's also a great tool for you to know, okay, I'm tracking these numbers. I'm seeing a steady uptick. I need to get ready to maybe go to online learning or maybe go and pick up my child and bring them back from school. And even if you're researching, thinking about what schools do I want to apply to next year, you can look at this map and see how well they're doing and how well they're handling it. So it's a great tool. You can even sometimes go to the colleges themselves on their own websites. They may be tracking and reporting the testing of COVID-19 and how well they're doing or not doing.
So glad that there were so few cases on your son's campus for sure, but what a fantastic tool for parents and students. So much great information at a time when we really can't get enough information, especially if we have a loved one living far away from home on a campus feeling uncertain. So before we close, we do have one more question here, and this is from a mother who says that her son was planning on going to the University of Maine, but has decided to take a gap year. And she asks, is this a bad idea? Because will it get him off the college track at this point, to a point where he might not be able to get back on after the gap year?
So it's a great question. You do have to have that focus. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. If you're going to take a gap year, have a plan. So there are courses online you could take for free. Are there additional, maybe at a community college level, courses a student can take to keep that academic fresh? So you don't say, well, I'm, getting out of the learning mode and the learning cycle. And then you could fall into that trap. It's potentially possible. So have a plan for that year and have that involve part of that plan be something academic. taking some type of classes somewhere. There are even free classes you can take online. You don't get credit for them, but it can keep you academically fresh. And that's kind of important to keep that connection and be ready to go off to college when that time comes a year later.
That's such great advice. So even if you're, well, certainly no one's going to be traveling for the most part, but if you're taking that year, make sure that that year has some structure and specifically some academic structure so that you don't completely sort of fall off the college wagon during that year. I think that's great advice.
Correct. Yeah, it could be a great time if you're not sure what do you want to major in. That's a great time to take some classes in different types and see what you may like. Explore some of those different careers that are out there, so you can keep that in mind, that you've still got that goal you're working towards.
That's a great suggestion and great advice. Don, this has been such an informative discussion. Thank you so much for being with us today. And a big thank you to our audience as well, and to our engineers behind the scenes, Alex Slatke and Mark Shieldrop. We couldn't do it without you. If you have questions or you'd like to talk directly with Don, once again, Mark, if we can put that information up on the screen, that will allow all of you AAA members out there or others to reach Don or to talk with us at AAA Northeast. All of our college counseling services, once again, are free to members. Whether you have a high schooler or a college student, we wish you a happy, healthy, and productive year. Stay safe, everyone, and have a great day. For AAA Northeast, I'm Mary McGuire with Don Kerr. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Take care, everybody.